What if the stories we've been told about history, our maps, our monuments, our timelines, were never complete to begin with? What if pieces were hidden, erased, or rewritten not by accident, but by design? Beneath the surface of recorded time lie strange ruins, impossible artifacts, and vanishing cities that defy logic and explanation. These aren't legends. These are the forgotten truths carved into the bones of our past. And once you hear them, history will never feel safe again. Welcome to Unsolved Archives, where we delve into the hidden, the mysterious, and the unanswered. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your insight could be the key to unlocking the truth. The seventh city of the Pharaoh. In the suffocating heat of the Egyptian desert, where the dunes seem to breathe and shift with each passing wind, there is a story the locals don't speak of, at least not directly. Among the Bedouin tribes near the edge of the western desert, there are whispers of a place swallowed by time, a city that never should have been built and now refuses to stay buried. They call it Samecket, the city of the shadow sun. In 1856, Thomas Redwine, a British explorer obsessed with uncharted ruins, led a small team into this unwelcoming stretch of land. Redwine wasn't driven by gold or fame, but by a passage he'd read in a dismissed translation of the Scrolls of Apis, an obscure and unverified set of papyri bought from a Cairo dealer. It spoke of a seventh city erected by a pharaoh erased from all other records, Pharaoh Khusef-Ka, the silent heir. There were only 6 great cities officially established by Egypt's early dynasties, cities that aligned with specific celestial events, sun cults, and the balance of Marat. But the scrolls implied a seventh was secretly built far from the Nile, meant not to honor the gods of light, but to bind something far older and darker beneath the sands. Redwine's group ventured west, charting unknown terrain for nearly 10 days. On the 11th day, their tracker, a Libyan man named Hassim, reportedly screamed in the night and fled barefoot into the darkness. He was never seen again. 2 days later, they found it. Half buried in the sands, broken columns stretched into the horizon like the fingers of a corpse clawing toward the surface. The architecture didn't match anything known from the region. The stones were black basalt, fused at the edges as though melted together by immense heat. Glyphs carved into the walls spiraled inward instead of reading left to right or top to bottom. The language was an unnerving hybrid of familiar hieratic symbols and jagged strokes that didn't match any ancient tongue. They camped near the central ziggurat-like structure, which Redwine dubbed the heart. The journal he kept, later recovered under mysterious circumstances, mentions an overwhelming sensation upon entering the place, as though time shivered when they stepped beyond its threshold. At night, they began hearing sounds, not the cries of animals, but deep groaning noises like stone grinding against stone, sometimes accompanied by the faint echo of chanting. One of the team members, a young geologist named Everett Clark, carved tally marks into his forearm every time he heard the chants. By the time Redwine noticed, Clark had made 14 marks and torn out his own tongue. Then came the dreams. Redwine described waking visions of a massive black sun hanging over a lifeless sea, and a pyramid submerged upside down beneath waves of sand, pulsing with something alive. He became convinced that Samecket was not built to honor gods, but to imprison something. On the 7th night, the entire expedition vanished. When a recovery crew was sent months later, all they found were fragments. Tattered tents, a smashed compass, and Redwine's notebook, clutched in the hand of a mummified corpse baked dry by the sun, too decayed to identify. The final pages of the journal were scrawled in blood, not ink. The last line read, "They sleep beneath the pillars, but not forever." Afterward, the Egyptian Antiquities Authority quietly declared the area off-limits, citing dangers from shifting sands and unstable terrain. The official record states that the ruins never existed and that Redwine's team likely perished from heat exhaustion and madness. But satellite scans decades later revealed strange, geometric formations buried deep beneath the western desert, in places where nothing should exist. Some archaeologists have hinted, off the record, that these ruins form a pattern, a sigil if viewed from high enough. One that does not align with any known Egyptian symbols, but with constellations lost to time, or perhaps invented by something else entirely. Locals still avoid that region. When asked why, a wrinkled guide near the Bahariya oasis said, "Because sometimes the wind doesn't blow from the east or west. It rises from beneath." The Map of Rujan. In the cold salt air of the Baltic Sea, off the northern coast of Germany, lies a wind-blasted island known as Rujan. Small and largely uninhabited today, its forests are dense, the beaches rocky and treacherous. To most, it is unremarkable, just another forgotten landmass off the coast of Europe. But in the year 1902, a chance discovery in a ruined church would uncover what would become one of the greatest cartographic anomalies in history. It began with the collapse of the northern transept of St. Albrecht's Monastery, a crumbling 12th-century stone structure nestled in the island's cliffs. Local masons were contracted to clear debris when they found a locked iron coffer buried beneath the foundation of the altar. Inside was a thick, sealed scroll, wax still intact, and wrapped in a cloth embroidered with a symbol none could identify, a six-pointed compass surrounding an inverted star. The scroll was delivered to a regional museum in Rostock, where historian and cartographer Dr. Lucas Eberhardt examined it. He expected to find yet another ecclesiastical map, perhaps symbolic or metaphorical in design. What he unrolled left him breathless. The parchment was a hand-drawn map dated 1491, signed only with the initials IVD. It displayed the familiar contours of Europe, the jagged edge of Scandinavia, even hints of inland Asia. But what stunned Eberhardt was what lay in the center of the Atlantic Ocean, a massive, detailed landmass labeled simply Valus. Roughly the size of Greenland, it contained cities marked in elegant ink, mountain ranges with names in Old Low German, and a river system too intricate to be imaginary. Skeptics dismissed it as artistic fancy, perhaps a fantasy inspired by Atlantis or classical legends. But Valus was not surrounded by the decorative seas and mythical beasts of medieval maps. It was meticulously rendered, with accurate latitude and longitude notations, wind current data, and compass alignments modern only in the 18th century. The strangest part? The coastlines matched no known distortions. They weren't speculative, like early sketches of the New World. They were precise. Shockingly precise. Dr. Eberhardt dug into archives across Europe for any mention of this land. He found none. No explorers referenced it. No church records. No merchant logs. It was as if Valus had been intentionally erased from every text, map, and memory. Then in 1904, two things happened almost simultaneously. First, Dr. Eberhardt vanished. His apartment was found empty, with no signs of struggle, but his notes were left behind. Pinned to the wall was a single page torn from the scroll, a drawing of a circular city labeled Kefferluen, with the words scrawled beneath. It was never lost, only locked. Second, a German naval expedition in the North Atlantic reported strange magnetic interference near the mid-Atlantic ridge. Their compasses spun erratically, and depth readings fluctuated wildly. One officer recorded in his log, "The sea floor is breathing, rising, falling, as though it remembers." In the decades that followed, the Map of Rujan was archived, then quietly removed from public viewing. Some believe the Vatican requested its transfer to a secure location. Others say it was bought by a private collector. But the mystery remained. In 1997, during a deep-sea sonar mapping of the mid-Atlantic ridge, researchers noticed a peculiar anomaly, a rectilinear pattern of underwater elevation changes spanning over 300 kilometers, just beneath the exact coordinates noted on the Valus map. Satellite images were corrupted. Deep-sea dives were cancelled. Official reports blamed tectonic shifts. But leaked footage from one dive team shows something haunting. Colossal stone structures beneath layers of coral, some shaped like gates, others like walls. A former naval officer, anonymous in his testimony, said, "The map wasn't just a record. It was a warning. And we ignored it." No one today can verify who IVD was. Some speculate he was part of an obscure monastic order tied to lost Templar offshoots. Others suggest he was a defector from some secret navigational guild, one that charted lands not by sight, but by memory. Or time. Because certain elements of the map are impossible for the era. mountain ranges in Antarctica drawn before they were ever discovered, ice patterns along Greenland that matched 21st century formations, and perhaps most damning, a tiny note scribbled in a lower corner of the parchment, nearly illegible, written in Latin. Valus non submersit. Transivit. Valus did not sink. It passed. Passed to where? Or when? No official answers exist. But among conspiracy theorists, deep-sea researchers, and fringe historians, Rujan remains a focal point of obsession. They say when the tides pull back hard enough on certain nights, you can hear bells, not from a church, but from a harbor that no longer exists. The disappearance of Fort Daegon. In the wild northern reaches of Canada, along the frozen mouth of the Hudson Bay, lies an expanse of land so desolate and untouched that time itself seems to falter. Snowdrifts rise like frozen waves, and the sun hovers low on the horizon, reluctant to shine. It was here, in 1737, that a French colonial expedition erected Fort Daegon, a modest but well-planned trading post intended to open fur routes deeper into the continent. Named after a French noble sponsor, the fort was built quickly but with great precision. It included barracks for 30 men, 2 watchtowers, a small chapel, storage rooms, and a central lodge for commanding officers. The men stationed there were experienced frontiersmen, soldiers, and clerics. They logged daily reports, marked trade with local tribes, and sent letters home via courier sled. For 4 years, Fort Daegon was a shining example of colonial order in an unforgiving wilderness. And then, in the winter of 1741, it went utterly silent. By the spring thaw of 1742, when a supply caravan from Fort St. Louis arrived, the scene they encountered would go on to haunt every man who survived the discovery. The fort stood completely intact. No signs of battle, weather damage, or desertion. Supplies were untouched. The watchtowers were fully manned, by skeletons still in uniform. No blood. No violence. Just husks sitting upright, weapons still in hand, as if waiting. Inside the barracks, it was worse. Every bed was made. Every trunk neatly closed. But the walls were smeared with blackened handprints, dozens, maybe hundreds. Most of them small, like those of children. The chapel's crucifix was upside down. Candles were lit, their wax dripping fresh onto the wooden altar, as though someone had just lit them. All the clocks in the fort had stopped. Each and every one. And all at the exact same time, 2:17 a.m. The journal of the fort's chaplain, Father Lucien Marseilles, was found inside the main lodge, pages torn in panic. The final entries read with mounting dread. March 4, 1741. The drums again. I swear they come from beneath. The ice groans at night, and with it, something follows. We heard laughter last night. Not from the men. March 7th. They took Du Bois. We heard him scream, but no blood, no struggle. Just his coat, frozen stiff at the edge of the woods. March 9th. The snow fell upward this morning. God forgive me, I saw it. I saw their faces in it. Pale and twisted, like masks made from wax. March 12th. The children. We see them now. In the windows. In the fire. We never had children here. The last entry was written in a shaking hand. March 13th. We shouldn't have built here. The earth remembers. And it wants us gone. An investigation was launched by the French colonial government, but those who traveled to Fort Daegon again found no new clues. Worse, many refused to stay more than a few hours. Several reported hearing a low thrumming under the snow, like war drums or a great heartbeat muffled beneath ice. Eventually, the territory was marked as cursed, and Fort Daegon was intentionally left off future maps. To this day, its exact location remains a closely guarded secret. In 1958, a Canadian geological survey team stumbled across strange readings near the supposed area of the fort, thermal signatures and unnatural magnetic anomalies. They sent a drone sled, which recorded only 3 minutes of footage before all systems failed. That footage was archived and locked away. but a former technician who leaked part of the footage described the final frame: a line of children standing in the woods, unmoving, faces pale, eyes wide open, and smiling. Legends say the land where Fort Daegon once stood is part of a thin place, where the boundary between our world and something older, colder, and more patient wears thin. Local Inuit tribes will not enter that region. When asked, an elder simply said, "The ground under Daegon doesn't sleep. It remembers being awake." The Clockmaker's prophecy. In the labyrinthine streets of early 17th century Prague, where alchemists once walked beside poets and astronomers debated beneath gaslit towers, there lived a man named Elias Grobner. He was not well known among the public, nor did he attend the royal court like other artisans of the day. But in the hidden corners of Bohemia, Grobner's name was spoken with both reverence and dread, because he was said to have built clocks that measured more than just time. His workshop was located behind an unmarked door in a crumbling alleyway near the Charles Bridge. Few ever saw inside. Those who did said the air inside shimmered strangely, as if time were folding around the brass and glass ticking machines mounted to every surface. Clocks of all shapes and sizes filled the room, each one slightly out of sync, none of them quite normal. Some had no minute hands. Others counted time backward. One spun continuously without ticking at all. But it was the horloge manis, the hand of the hour, that made Grobner infamous. In 1611, Grobner presented his creation to the city council, a massive brass and obsidian timepiece with 12 rotating plates, each adorned with symbols no one could decipher. Unlike the zodiac signs on Prague's famous astronomical clock, these plates featured horrifying, abstract shapes, runes that twisted if one stared too long. Grobner claimed that each plate represented a cycle, not of months or stars, but of events destined to shape or unmake the world. At first, the council laughed. But then Grobner demonstrated the mechanism's alignment. One plate slid perfectly into place, its symbol a burning crown. Below it was inscribed the year 1610, the year of the Habsburg assassination that had nearly thrown the region into chaos. The second plate aligned with 1666, marked by a burning tower and a coiled worm, eerily resembling the Great Fire of London. But what turned awe into terror was the eighth plate, which Grobner claimed represented 1914. The symbol was a skeletal tree surrounded by helmets and the number 4. 4 years of war, 4 fallen empires. When asked how he could know this, Grobner merely replied, "Time tells you everything if you stop listening to the clock." 2 weeks later, Grobner was arrested for heresy and occult practices. The horloge manis was confiscated and locked in the crypts beneath the old town hall. Grobner himself was never tried. He was found dead in his cell, his body completely desiccated, his heart missing from his chest. His final note, scratched into the wall with a splintered fingernail, read, "The clock does not count time. It counts regrets." The artifact was forgotten until 1899, when city renovations unearthed the crypt and rediscovered the strange machine. It had not rusted. In fact, it had continued to tick, albeit slowly, without maintenance for nearly 3 centuries. More disturbing still, the plates had shifted. Historians brought in to examine the device were baffled. The 10th plate now showed the date 2001, with a twin tower sigil pierced by black arrows. The 11th marked 2031, its symbol a cracked ice cap over a red spiral. The final plate, plate 12, was blank, its surface mirrored and dark. Engineers who examined it reported feeling cold when near it, and one technician went missing overnight, leaving only his wristwatch on the floor beside the machine, its hands spinning so fast they blurred into a ring of glass. After these events, the horloge manis was sealed once more beneath Prague's town hall. Tourists walk above it daily, never knowing what lies beneath their feet. But rumors persist. Some say a secret order monitors the machine, tracking each plate's subtle shifts. Others claim Grobner didn't invent the clock. He found it, in a monastery buried beneath the Bohemian forest, and only understood a fraction of its purpose. In 2023, a hacker leaked what appeared to be photographs of the horloge manis, still functional, still updating. According to metadata, the 12th plate now bears a faint outline, not of a symbol, but of a face. Observers disagree on whose face it is. Some say it looks like Grobner himself. Others insist it's their own. But one caption scrawled on the leaked image has since circulated in the darkest corners of the internet. It reads, "When the final plate aligns, the clock resets. But what comes next isn't time, it's memory." The monastery that drew maps of hell. High in the mist-choked ridges of the Abruzzo Mountains, in central Italy, rests a crumbling ruin that few know by name. Once known as the Monastery of Santa Velia, it is now a skeleton of broken stone, strangled by ivy and buried in centuries of snow and silence. It never appears in tour guides. Its name is absent from diocesan records. And yet, once, it produced some of the most disturbing and inexplicable manuscripts the Catholic Church has ever encountered, if those records can be believed at all. The story begins in 1235, when a Dominican inquisitor named Brother Aldus Pharaoh was dispatched to Santa Velia after strange documents from the monastery began circulating among regional abbots. These weren't scripture, nor illuminated gospels. They were maps, but not of Italy or Rome or any world recognizable to Christian eyes. They were sprawling diagrams of underground cities, labyrinthine corridors, chambers labeled with phrases like the furnace of breathing ash, the library of the nameless, and the arch of black memory. Each map was inked with surgical precision. At first glance, they resembled ancient Roman sewer charts or mine blueprints. But the dimensions were wrong: hallways wider than cathedrals, staircases descending for miles, whole cities inverted beneath craters. More unsettling was the language. Latin, yes, but spliced with Aramaic, Old Greek, and something else entirely, a language with no known origin, its grammar inconsistent, but recurring across every manuscript. Brother Pharaoh arrived with a contingent of guards, expecting blasphemy or madness. What he found was worse. The monks of Santa Velia greeted him with vacant eyes and emotionless voices. They did not speak unless spoken to. They walked as if asleep, yet transcribed and illustrated with relentless focus. The youngest among them, no older than 15, drew entire sections of their maps from memory, eyes closed. When asked where these cities came from, they only replied, "We remember them." In his own journal, Pharaoh wrote, "These men are not possessed by demons, nor are they mad. They are remembering places we are not meant to know." Further inspection revealed a hidden scriptorium beneath the monastery, sealed behind an iron door covered in wax seals and prayers. Inside, Pharaoh found hundreds of maps filed in black drawers. Some glowed faintly when exposed to firelight. Others were drawn in ash. One was made entirely of animal skin sewn from multiple creatures, stitched together like a patchwork of flesh. The crowning horror came when Pharaoh discovered a map titled Peregrinatio Finalis, the Final Pilgrimage. Unlike the others, this wasn't a chart of rooms or cities. It was a route, marked with exact dates and times, descending layer by layer beneath the earth, until finally ending in a space simply labeled Chamber of Keys. The final note written below read, "Entry requires memory. Exit requires loss." That night, Pharaoh attempted to confront the abbot, only to find the monastery in chaos. The monks were gone, every last one. No signs of struggle. No trails in the snow. Just abandoned tools, half-written scrolls, and one final map laid upon the altar. It was labeled Santa Velia, but the drawing showed the monastery upside down, its foundation cracked open like a mouth, stairs leading inward rather than outward, with tiny figures descending into blackness. By sunrise, the building began to collapse. No cause was ever found. Pharaoh's report was delivered to Rome, along with a handful of recovered maps. They were immediately declared heretical and locked in the Vatican's secret archives, where they remain to this day. Or so we're told. In 1998, two hikers exploring off-trail in the Abruzzo region came across a strange stone arch hidden beneath a thicket. Carved into the keystone was a faded inscription, Porta Vilii. Just beyond it, inside the hollowed remains of a cliffside, were frescoes. Faint, but unmistakable, walls painted with cities that defied gravity, architecture built for something not quite human. The figures in the frescoes had no eyes, only mouths. Hundreds of them. One hiker went mad. The other fled, later confessing he heard whispering beneath his feet for 3 days afterward, whispers asking for directions back. Scholars dismiss the story as a hoax. The site has since been sealed and listed as a rockslide hazard. But digital leaks of a few maps, allegedly scans of the originals, have circulated among arcane scholars. The maps bear paths labeled with phrases such as Route of Broken Names, Vault of Returned Children, and Throne of the Observer. Some claim the maps still change on their own, that the paths grow shorter, that something is climbing up. To this day, no surviving monk from Santa Velia has ever been found. But in the Vatican's restricted records, one line appears at the end of the Santa Velia file, written in red ink. They were not drawing hell. They were remembering where they came from. Every case adds a new layer of mystery, leaving more questions than answers. Which one lingers in your mind, and what's your take on what really happened?